Tarouk, tonight, faced with soaring costs, Pride Toronto organizers say they may be forced to make cuts to this year's festival.
We have seen a huge increase in both our insurance and also in the cost of paid duty police officers.
Organizers say an increase in the festival size and heightened security risks surrounding 2S LGBTQ events are driving up costs. And
these actions put people's lives at risk and are unacceptable.
Police in the GTA say they're seeing a big spike in street racing. Now they're banding together to crack down on these dangerous drivers. Plus,
someone is going to die, and we are sitting here praying it won't happen.
a small town northeast of the GTA is about to lose its emergency department, but area residents aren't letting it go without a fight. Good evening. Pride Toronto says it might have to scale back this year as it wrestles with major cost increases for policing and insurance. The group says this is in part due to the larger scale of the event, but also because of safety concerns in the community. Talia Ricci explains.
It's beginning to look a lot like Pride Month in the village.
Our employment triples, quadruples from winter, so it's very fun.
But after Pride Toronto was slapped with a massive unexpected increase in costs, there are worries about what this year's festival will look like.
We have seen a huge increase in both our insurance and also in the cost of paid duty police officers.
Sherwin Modeste said costs for insurance ran the group $60,000 for 2022, but their rates this year are up to $278,000. Toronto Police gave an estimate of $62,000 for paid duty officers at last year's festival. This year, the cost is up to $186,000. Toronto Police said the service is recommending more resources because the event is bigger. This year, there's expected to be longer festival hours and a new 1,000-person beer garden at the event. Modeste says they were also told there are concerns about security threats.
We have seen an increase in hate towards the 2S LGBTQ community. And again, oftentimes folks will say, you know, it's happening in the US, it's not going to come to Canada. Unfortunately, it is here.
Pride events are facing similar challenges across North America.
Particularly in the US, there's such a large kind of challenge with that, where with people who have varying opinions about Pride, they're seen as higher risk events, therefore higher insurance.
Which is really unfortunate because it comes at a cost, right? You have to then consider moving some of those funds to cover some of those expenses, which then come at a cost of eliminating some of the events.
Pride Toronto says it's currently in talks with all three levels of government, asking for help to try to absorb some of these costs. But the organization is really feeling the pressure. The festival is just weeks away.
If we do not get the support that we need from government officials, it's going to impact the level of programs that we're going to be delivering. Whereas 2022, we were able to hire over 400 local artists. It means that something is going to have to give up.
Many in the community hope it doesn't come down to that.
I moved here, I wasn't comfortable being myself, and then I went to my first Pride Festival, and it meant so much for me. It's so important to have this Pride Festival and keep it growing, keep it moving, so that so many more kids for years to come can be comfortable in their own skin.
Talia Ricci, CBC News, Toronto.
Police services across the GTA are preparing for a busy summer as they join forces to crack down on street racing and stunt driving. It's all part of an operation they call Project Erase. Greg Ross has more on how it's going.
It's a problem that continues to get worse right across the GTA. Cars racing on streets and highways, or groups of people gathering in parking lots to perform stunts.
Let me be clear. There is zero tolerance for street racing and stunt driving anywhere across the GTA. These actions put people's lives at risk and are unacceptable.
Since 1999, police forces across the GTA have been working together to address the problem under the name Project Erase. They have open lines of communication and share resources.
Street races do not acknowledge jurisdictional boundaries.
This year's joint effort is already being put to the test. Acting Superintendent Matt Moyer with Toronto Police says they've seen a 31% increase in street racing and stunt driving in the first 5 months of this year compared to 2022.
Since the beginning of the year, officers have already laid 521 charges for the offense.
There were another 500 arrests in Peel Region, where stunt driving seems to be at its worst. Some say it's getting out of control. Large groups of people gathering in parking lots like this one at the Westwood Square Mall to perform dangerous stunts in their cars, leaving behind skid marks like this all over the parking lot.
They're very stubborn because they keep coming back.
Mississauga City Councillor Carolyn Parrish says they have recently put up barriers to try and stop stunt drivers.
The problem is noise, and there's a lot of residential apartments all around this big mall. So you've got people that are being kept awake at night from 11 o'clock till 4 in the morning.
The drivers, they just go crazy down my street. It drives me nuts. Drives me crazy.
It's a squealing sound. It's like, but you can hear it echoing as they're doing their turns. But they always drop their pressure. You hear pop, 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 and then they do a burnout. Then you see the smoke rise. So you can.
What's the point of just driving up and down, making burnouts when people trying to go to work every day, especially on a weekday?
Police say their most important partner in cracking down on street racing and stunt driving is the public. They say the majority of arrests are the result of complaints from the community. Greg Ross, CBC News, Mississauga.
Police are looking for a suspect after what's being described as a random attack on a person waiting for a TTC bus. It happened on Tuesday. Police say the victim was waiting at the bus stop at Islington and Elmhurst near Rexdale Boulevard just after 9 p.m. The person was approached by the male suspect and attacked. The victim suffered 2 wounds that investigators say appear to have been caused by an edged weapon. They say the attack was unprovoked. The suspect is described as being approximately 5'6" tall, with a dark complexion, wearing black pants, a gray sweatshirt, and carrying a black backpack and a green and blue shopping bag. Peel police are looking for an alleged violent offender who they say could be in the region. Police issued a public safety alert warning the public of the 39-year-old federal inmate. Kyle Andrews is wanted on charges including assault, uttering threats, and forcible confinement. Police say he may be driving a 2014 white Mercedes SUV. He's considered armed and dangerous and should not be approached. If seen, police are asking the public to call 911 immediately. Toronto's deputy mayor making a pitch today for more federal funding for our city.
So I've been very clear that the City of Toronto is still very much recovering from the impact of the pandemic, that we do need help. And we have taken that advocacy this week to the next level. We have launched a website, toronto.ca/shortfall, where residents are encouraged to email their MPs and ask them to stand up for Toronto and to help us.
McKelvey joining her counterparts from across the country. They're taking part in the Federation of Municipalities conference, which is on until Sunday at the Metro Convention Centre. Well, just about 1 in 3 eligible Torontonians cast a ballot in last year's municipal election. With the mayoral by-election just over a month away, city officials hope a key improvement to the voting process will bring more people to the polls this time. Here's what you need to know. Eligible voters have 3 options to cast their ballots. You can mail in your ballot in advance, but the deadline to apply to vote by mail is this Friday at 4:30 p.m. If you have already applied, you could receive your voter information card as early as this week. New this election, you can vote at any of the 50 polling stations open for advance voting between June 8th and June 13th. Polling stations will be open from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. All 50 stations will be accessible. If you vote on Election Day on June 26th, you will have to cast a ballot at your assigned polling station. You can find out where that is through the city's My Vote website. It will also be printed on your voter information card. Election Day polls will be open from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Voter information cards are now being mailed to those on the voter list as of May 14th. If you don't receive one, don't worry. You can add yourself to the voters list when you go to vote. There are 102 candidates registered in the race for mayor. Voters will be asked to fill in the circle beside the name of the person they want to be Toronto's 66th mayor. Looks like we're on a good roll, Colette. Sunshine, warm temperatures.
Yes, we are really headed into a pattern where we're going to see day after day of dry, sunny conditions. And the dry, will start to put emphasis on that after a few days, because this is going to go on into next week. Now, I want to start off with a look at the daytime highs, because yes, we are going to be warming up. But for today, these are the kind of numbers where if you get these, at the end of April, beginning of May, everyone's pretty happy. I mean, it's nice. But we're coming to the end of May, beginning of June. And these readings are a little below seasonal. We're going to get back to norms, though, into tomorrow. So a look just at your current readings, some cooler numbers there. Of course, you can knock a few degrees off closer to the lakeshore. However, it's that same lakeshore that keeps things just mild enough that we're not looking at frost for the city, but into the northern areas, to the north, northwest, northeast. Again, tonight, we do have frost advisories. It'll be patchy in nature, but if you still have some plants you can pull in or be protecting, you do want to be thinking about looking after those. In terms of any kind of active weather, we are not going to be seeing this for a while. It makes you want to kind of check the radar, but no, we don't need to. We just need to broaden our perspective. Area of low pressure to the west, an area of rainfall to the south. This ridge is going to get stuck in place here, and that's going to keep our skies clear. So tonight, 6 degrees for that low, and tomorrow, there it is, back to seasonal, 21 the high, Maribel.
Okay, well, we'll check with you in a bit. Colette, thank you.
Sounds good.
1 week from today, the emergency department in Minden is set to be closed forever. The hospital network says the issue is staffing and that it had no choice. Area residents are worried about the move, and with time running out, they're stepping up their fight to stop the closure. Queen's Park reporter Lorenda Redekop has more from Minden.
The coming closure looks more real today. This sign now at the entrance to the hospital. The ER shutdown just a week away.
We are not statistics. We are determined. The only statistic we want to be is the town that saves its ER, because we're parents, we're grandparents, our kids are our parents, everybody here, and as much as we know somebody is going to die in an ambulance between here and somewhere, we don't want it to happen.
The signs they put up around town used to be all yellow.
The yellow is a sign of hope, and we had hope, but now we have a warning that this is going to close. And people need to know it's going to close, and we need their help.
But Haliburton Highland Health Services says it has no choice, given a staffing shortage. They're consolidating services at the larger hospital in Haliburton. The spokesperson for the health minister says her previous comments about this stand.
These are local decisions made by local leadership, local hospitals.
The local pharmacist is also a father and had to rely on the ER frequently with his kids. He says everyone who comes to his business is worried.
On the business front, I'm not going to lie to you, scripts and patients that are moving to another community, that's on our minds.
We also run into a man who drove himself to the hospital a few weeks ago when he didn't feel well. Turned out he had a heart attack while golfing.
I don't know what my story would have been if it wasn't open.
A couple dozen people gathered in a park today, upset and hoping to change things.
And there could be political implications to this move. This community is part of a riding that almost always votes PC Blue.
With no support and Ford and Laurie Scott not showing up at all, I'll never vote PC again. It's shameful what they're doing.
I will never vote PC again. I'm hoping that we get an NDP representative.
And today, the opposition leader was in Minden meeting with residents who are frustrated. Almost 25,000 people have signed a petition calling for at least a one-year pause on the closure plan.
What happens in Minden
is what's going to happen across this province if we're not careful.
People here say even if the ER does close on June 1st, they plan to keep advocating to try to make sure the closure isn't permanent. Lorenda Redicop, CBC News, Minden.
Ontario is offering to pay residents to lower their air conditioning during peak summer periods, part of a new energy conservation program announced today.
With an estimated 600,000 smart thermostats already installed across the province of Ontario, families across the province will be able to benefit from peak perks while helping reduce demand on our provincial grid.
Households with smart thermostats can opt in for the Peak Perks program starting in June. The province will hand out $75 prepaid credit cards to families who sign up. In exchange, they would give the thermostat manufacturer access to their device. Between June and September, thermostats would be adjusted by 2 to 4 degrees up to 10 times. The ministry says the changes will only occur on weekdays for up to 3 hours during peak periods for electricity. Students and community members in Vaughan gathered for the second annual Hoden Nalaye Day. The event honored the Somali-Canadian journalist, but also highlighted young people who've made a difference in their community. Meg Roberts has that story.
Hoden strived the most to make a difference in her community, especially she had a special interest and believed in the youth of tomorrow.
A tribute to Somali-Canadian journalist Hoden Nalaya. Her family is handing out scholarships to students who have had a positive impact on their community.
Changemaker Award really is an opportunity for our family to continue Hoden's legacy.
Nalaya, who once lived in Vaughan, was killed in an attack on a hotel in Somalia in 2019. She was known for making major contributions to the Canadian Somali community through her work as a journalist. Today, her son, who was 7 when she died, paid tribute to his mother.
We love you, Mom.
3 Hoden Nalaya secondary school students were awarded $5,000 scholarships.
Hoden Nalaya's values, her integrity, all of those values are things that we really want our students to embrace, and that's something that I know carries through our student body.
One of those students is Leanna Eiffel. She launched the Black Students Alliance, which provides a safe space at the school.
Everyone has an opportunity. You really just need to take it yourself. You have to take that step forward and persevere.
What constitutes a superhero, and who gets to be one?
Cassius Koo started Just for Jamie, a foundation for his best friend who recently passed away. They were both patients at Sick Kids Hospital. Koo's superpower now is advocating for young patients.
Sometimes the biggest superheroes reside within the hearts of small children that fight big battles.
Meg Roberts, CBC News.
A ground stop ordered for all Air Canada and Rouge flights in the U.S. earlier this morning has been lifted. The precautionary halt lasted about an hour and led to some flight delays. The U.S. Aviation Agency, which ordered it, says the request came from the airline. In a statement, Air Canada called it a temporary technical issue with a system that communicates with the aircraft. A federal government source told CBC News there was no reason to believe it was a cybersecurity incident. Well, months of high consumer prices and high interest rates have driven up personal debt in Canada. And now the federal agency that oversees housing affordability is expressing concern. Nisha Patel reports.
It's no secret that Canadians are feeling stretched.
I stopped going out and I don't even have Wi-Fi anymore.
I used to live in downtown, so I moved back home.
$41.70. Between the higher cost of living and higher interest rates meant to wrangle inflation, it appears many Canadians have racked up costly debt.
Half of my paycheck is going into paying off the credit card.
It's just ridiculous. Housing is too expensive, food is too expensive, childcare is too expensive.
Now, a warning from the National Housing Agency. Canadian households have the highest debt levels in the G7. If a recession or other unexpected crisis takes hold, the CMHC says families and the entire economy will be more vulnerable.
If people lose their jobs, they can't service their debt, their mortgage, and that leads to a major problem.
Canada's housing crisis is a central factor here. 3/4 of household debt is tied to mortgages. The CMHC says any attempt to address this looming problem should start with making housing more affordable.
Governments need to get together with the private sector to build more housing, get the supply side of housing working.
Still, it's also a call to Canadians to get their debt levels under control. But it's a difficult task for those who can barely afford the necessities.
If you've renewed your mortgage at any point in the last year, your housing costs are a lot higher, transportation is higher, so it's all of those expenses going up far faster than income.
This bankruptcy advisor says it's been his busiest month in years, a troubling trend that may be tough to turn around.
In a lot of cases, people don't have any choice. You can't just stop eating food because it went up in cost. So yes, we are in a crunch now.
A crunch that could get tighter when Canada's central bank makes its next interest rate announcement in just a few weeks. Nisha Patel, CBC News, Toronto.
A man described as one of the key figures behind the riot at the U.S. Capitol in January of 2021 has been given a lengthy prison term. Stuart Rhodes is the founder of a far-right group called the Oath Keepers Militia. Today, a judge rejected Rhodes' claim he was a political prisoner and sentenced him to 18 years in prison. Nick Harper reports.
The prosecution had asked for a 25-year sentence, so slightly less than they had hoped for, but 18 years is a very significant stretch, and it is the most significant sentence given out so far for the more than 1,000 people who have been convicted and sentenced for their crimes on January the 6th. Stuart Rhodes at sentencing showed no remorse. He instead said that he was a political prisoner, and he said that he continued to support Donald Trump. The judge said that Stuart Rhodes presents an ongoing threat to the very fabric of US democracy, and that he wanted democracy in this country to devolve into violence. The judge also warned that Stuart Rhodes, when he's released, could try something like this again. Now, he turned up to the Capitol building on January the 6th dressed in military-style fatigues. Interesting to note, he didn't actually enter the Capitol building, but the prosecution showed that he was very much in charge of the situation, that he was marshalling the troops in constant contact with various teams of Oath Keepers around and inside the Capitol building during the course of the day. He also positioned an arsenal of weapons at various hotels in the local area. Those weapons were never actually brought down to the scene, but they were there and they were ready. He was even recorded in the days and weeks after the attack on the Capitol saying that the Oath Keepers should have brought rifles to the Capitol. Now, his defence team tried to portray him as a man there who was acting as a bodyguard to various Republican VIPs, also saying that there were no messages from the Oath Keepers showing their plan of attack or what they intended to do. However, the judge and the prosecution didn't feel this was the case, so a very significant sentence for Stuart Rhodes, one that the judge said he hopes would deter other people from carrying out similar type attacks in the future. Nick Harper for CBC News, Washington.
Russia's mercenary group Wagner says it is handing over control of Bakhmut to the Russian military. The private army's leader has claimed his soldiers have captured the eastern Ukrainian city. Bakhmut has seen months of fierce fighting during the Russian invasion. Ukraine disputes Russia's claim that the city has fallen. Tens of thousands of people are estimated to have died over the last 9 months in the battle to control the city. A car crashed into the gates outside the British Prime Minister's residence today, and a suspect is in custody. The incident set off a rapid security response, but authorities now say counter-terrorism officers are not part of the investigation. Abby Kovasin reports.
I'm just a few meters away from 10 Downing Street, and it was just behind me that police cars had basically blocked off the road. As you can see, traffic is now flowing freely as all road restrictions have been lifted. But London police say that it was around 4:20 p.m. local time when a silver Kia approached 10 Downing Street. It got past the initial barrier but was stopped at the main gate. So there were reports of a collision there. Of course, always tourists milling about. So some people saying that witnesses were screaming as the car was approached. Of course, there's always a heavy police presence there as well. We do understand that a male suspect has been arrested on charges of suspicion of criminal damage and dangerous driving. Police have now collected some items from the vehicle and placed them into evidence bags. We understand that they also searched for possible explosives as well. And we understand at the time of the incident that Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, who lives and works at 10 Downing, was actually on the premises, but that he was taken away at some point. We don't know where he was taken to, and he's no longer there. Staff at 10 Downing at the time were also asked to remain on the premises and not leave. So there was a lockdown of some kind. Police not yet sure about whether it was a deliberate act or whether it was an accident. Abby Kwodawson, CBC News, London.
Although he's been in the job for a couple of months now, Michael Duhem was introduced today as RCMP Interim Commissioner at an official change of command ceremony.
Veuillez s'il vous plaît vous lever pour l'arrivée du commissaire entrant de la GRC, Michael Duhem, the 25th Commissioner of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police.
Duhem had served as Deputy Commissioner under former top Mountie Brenda Lucki. He was named her interim replacement after she retired in March. At today's ceremony, Lucki got her final chance to inspect the troops in Gatineau, Quebec. She took over the force in 2018, promising structural change to rid the Mounties of what she admitted was a toxic culture. Critics say Lucki didn't do enough to address persistent allegations of systemic racism and workplace harassment within the ranks. Lucki also faced criticism for her force's handling of the mass shooting in Nova Scotia and the convoy protests in Ottawa and Alberta. The federal government will provide more than $800,000 in one-time funding to help Akwesasne Mohawk Territory Police purchase new equipment. That includes money for equipment like drones and surveillance cameras to help monitor the community that borders Quebec, Ontario, and New York State. The announcement comes in the wake of the deaths of 8 migrants in the St. Lawrence River and is part of more than $12 million headed the community's way.
Ideal thing would be to have a police officer every street corner, but that's not the reality and that's impossible. So through this funding, it'll permit us to purchase technological equipment, whether it be drones, whether it be surveillance cameras that we could set up along the entrances to our community or along the waterways.
The money may also be used for an airboat, vehicles, firearms, and forensic equipment. Cooler temperatures and rain are providing a welcome break in parts of Alberta, but in others, out-of-control flames continue to wreak havoc. Thousands are still unable to return home and have no idea when they'll be able to. As Kayla Hounsell reports, it's now being called a record-breaking spring for wildfires.
I'm in the town of High Level, which is more than 700 kilometers north of Edmonton, and where the Denetha First Nation is setting up a temporary camp for people who have been displaced by fires. One of its communities, Chate, was evacuated as fire approached almost 2 weeks ago now, and that left them trying to find places for almost 800 people to live. Hotels here in High Level were already full and still are because other communities evacuated before them. So now they're setting up trailers here at this site behind me for around 400 people to live because they still don't know when they'll be able to return home. And they also know this is just the beginning of wildfire season here in Alberta. In the meantime, many are being forced to live in tents because there's just nowhere else to go.
It hurts to see Canada and Alberta going to flames, you know. It hurts so much to see that, and it's crazy to see stuff like that everywhere. But all you have to do is just pray. Just keep praying as much as you can.
And the First Nation is also setting up a temporary mental health facility near its band office. People here have experienced so much trauma. This is the 5th time they have been forced to leave their homes in the past 6 years due to wildfires and floods. The new facility will be funded by the federal government, as will the mental health clinicians being brought in to staff it. And crews here have been working on clearing the land since last Friday. They hope to have those temporary structures up within 3 weeks, and that is help people here say is desperately needed. Kayla Hounsell, CBC News, High Level, Alberta.
The cooler weather is also allowing Saskatchewan to lift its fire ban and allow some evacuees who've been staying at the University of Regina to head home.
I had a great time here. It's so beautiful. They treated us with respect. They fed us. They gave us clothes to wear. And it's just awesome. I wouldn't want to. I just don't want to leave from here. No. No? No.
People in Île-Lacrosse evacuated their community more than a week ago. The Saskatchewan Public Safety Agency is still supporting some evacuees in North Battleford, Lloydminster, and Regina. People forced out of a Northwest Territories town by wildfire will also be allowed to return starting today. The evacuation order for many people in Hay River has been downgraded to an alert. The fire that forced the evacuation is still burning, and it is expected to pose a risk all summer. Hay River's mayor says people who do return should be ready to leave again if fire conditions worsen. And that's really something, Colette, that this fire season isn't going to be ending anytime soon. We've got a long way to go here.
Yeah, early days, and for it to be so bad so early, unusual, and now we've got to get through this. Now, the other thing we'll be getting through is the Atlantic hurricane season. That will be starting on June 1st. I was talking about that last night, and I want to talk about a few things in terms of the factors that can influence it, because we do have some of the predictions coming out today from NOAA, and we can go over those in terms of what they're thinking for the season. But we need to look at the ENSO, which is the El Niño Southern Oscillation. So it has 3 states. Okay, I'm going to make this really simple. El Nino, you've heard of this. La Nina, we just came off a 2-year cycle of that. And then the third state is neutral. And we are neutral right now in terms of what's going on with the oscillation or the waters here in the Pacific. But we are likely heading into an El Nino, okay? So a warming of those Pacific waters. That usually can have an impact on the Atlantic basin in terms of the number of hurricanes in a positive way to keep it down. But of course, there's a but, especially with climate change. We're talking about these areas being unusually warm, the water here in the Atlantic. And because of that, I think the forecasters here that deal specifically with these things are kind of saying they think maybe it'll fall in between. And so we'll be looking at kind of an average season, the two things balancing each other out. So the forecast for 2023 season, and June 1st it starts, goes to the end of November, 12 to 17, average is 14. Hurricanes, so hurricane strength 5 to 9. You see that also falls in the average, and major hurricanes. With climate change, again, when we do see these storms, major hurricanes, they tend to be even stronger than usual, more potent and destructive. So watching as that season begins very carefully, and eventually some of these storms often have an impact on our weather patterns. Frost advisory, speaking of the weather pattern at home, with some cool readings again tonight. The current temperatures, and basically these are close to our daytime highs. We're below seasonal, but we're heading above seasonal, and we're heading into a pattern that's going to be very dry for several days into probably the end of next week before we get into a chance of seeing some showers. Quite the run. So that ridge of high pressure, we almost get a blocking pattern here. Well, we do, with a trough and then this ridge and then a trough again. It doesn't move anywhere. If anything, we see this ridge expanding. So with that, clear skies at night, sunshine during the day. Tomorrow, that UV index will be high, climbing to very high. And the other thing that will be climbing will be our temperatures, as we're going to see those going above normal as we head into the end of the weekend and the beginning of next week. Maribel, quite the forecast, isn't it?
Look at those temperatures. Yes, please. Thanks, Colette.
You're welcome.
Well, severe heat gripped parts of India this week, and for some animals, that meant special measures. Absolutely no offense taken when an elephant at Delhi Zoo was sprayed by a water hose. The hippos at Lucknow Zoo have naturally have a pond available to them, but the white tiger was able to take a dip as well. Sprinklers are also installed. Temperatures in parts of the region hit 45 degrees this week. Tourism is poised to expand in the north as a generation of travelers seeks out new adventures. In the Yukon, that means training guides to provide those unique experiences. And as Cheryl Kawaja shows us, a new training course in Whitehorse is aiming to do just that.
Even before the tourists descend upon the Yukon for the season, these guides are diving into swiftwater rescue practice. This course is part of the brand new training offered by the Canadian Outdoor Academy.
I had some experience, but I could really increase my skills here during this course. So that was the perfect opportunity, so I jumped on it.
Each year, there's an estimated 400 tourism guides working in the territory. Some of those are local, but many come from elsewhere in Canada and Europe. This 15-day program aims to initiate future Yukon guides and give them a base.
Everybody say we need more staff. We need to get more trained staff. Okay, we find an idea.
For the head of the academy teaching this program, it's important that the guides understand the isolation of the region. Wilderness first aid is essential. A sense of the remoteness, but also the culture, biodiversity, and sense of place.
The main idea is to give some knowledge base for people who like to be in the tourism industry but never get any certification in the past.
Offering this training in place by teachers from here allows for direct transfer of local knowledge and experience.
It's different from what we see across North America, and it's important for guides to understand what local First Nations have gone through and where they stand today.
The Wilderness Tourism Association hopes it might attract some guides to move here and stay.
It really allows to set the bar and or raise the bar and say, this is what we want to see on a wilderness tour, and it doesn't matter which company you are working for.
The big dream is to see this grow to a multi-year training program. But in the meantime, a winter version is on deck later this year. And these guides will be out on tour any day now. Cheryl Kawaja, CBC News, Whitehorse.
This week, Canadians are recognizing the first responders who show up when someone calls 911. It's Paramedic Services Week. Rowan Kennedy takes us through a typical day for one team.
It's a situation that can deteriorate over time.
No need for lights and sirens. Paramedics Kyra Rowan and Emily Ranger are on a low-priority call.
Here?
An 87-year-old man is alone, confused and in pain. His neighbor called 911 saying he fell and hurt himself.
He has dementia. He doesn't really remember.
Ranger talks to family as Rowan searches the apartment for clues. He might have broken a rib, and he needs to be sent to the hospital.
It hurts there, it hurts on my left shoulder.
Just sometimes sitting down and listening to them and hearing them out is all they need and makes them feel a lot better. And that's okay. We're all humans, and I think that's a huge part of our job is the social aspect.
You're dealing with humans, like I said.
The paramedics have been working together since March. They're one of 100 ambulance teams on the ground across Montreal and Laval. Their union says that's not enough, and workers are stretched thin.
We're missing staff to be able to respond properly and in an adequate fashion.
Urgence Santé acknowledges the lack of staff is an urgent issue. It hopes to hire 100 workers in the next year.
Our job definitely is misunderstood by a lot of people. The profession is a tough profession. That, there's no lie about that. It's definitely a tough profession. Any emergency services profession is a tough one.
Rowan and Ranger say working together on the road and helping people makes a difficult job worthwhile.
You want to dance?
I don't know. You wanted to dance?
I was a dancer.
Okay. Well, dance at the hospital. That's fine.
Rowan Kennedy, CBC News, Montreal.
As we head to break, here's a look at where the markets closed today. The TSX was down 154 points. The Dow fell 35, and the dollar traded down to 73.38 cents US. We'll be right back. It's mango season in Toronto, and the city is ripe with a wide variety of the tropical fruit. But where are the best places to get a good mango? Metro Morning's food guide, Suresh Dosh, takes us on a tour.
The number one question that I get asked, being the mango person, is where can I go to get mangoes in the city, in downtown Toronto? If I didn't want to drive, if I don't want to leave to go to Mississauga or Scarborough, I always say then you want to go to Nav Grocery. Govind, I love that you have the mangoes almost near the door. So as soon as people come in here.
Because everybody should know that we are carrying it.
Right. When I think of April in Toronto now, we've become such an obsessed city with mango. Everyone likes to eat mango here. But you carry the Kesar mangoes.
Yeah, Kesar is this one.
Kesar is these ones.
Yes.
Which are from Gujarat.
Gujarat.
And then you have the Badami mangoes, which are from southern parts of India.
Yes.
And then you have the Alfonso
Alfonso from Maharashtra.
From Maharashtra.
Yes.
So can you tell me, for somebody that doesn't know, if they come here for the very first time, what is so special about all of the mangoes in general? Why is it so?
See, Alfonso is always king of mangoes called. And the taste, you can remember always for a year to come the next season.
How popular are these mangoes? How many cases are you bringing in every week?
Every week we sell more than 300 boxes.
So we're leaving downtown and we are now heading up to Scarborough to go to a couple of food stores in Scarborough where I think you can find a pretty amazing selection of mangoes in the spring months. I'm going to take you to Bombay Foods. So this is a store that's been here for decades. Here right now they have some pretty amazing selection of mangoes. As you walk through the produce aisle, you'll see that the mango kind of shows up in every other box. Uptown though, if you want like some of the really amazing mangoes, like the Kesar, Alfonso, or the Badami mangoes from India, you may not necessarily find them in the produce aisle. It's because they don't want people tampering with them and pressing the mango to find out if it's ripe, because they're pretty precious mangoes. So if you want to find those mangoes, you have to go to the cashier. Follow me. So they have the Alfonso mangoes here, but they also have the Kesar mangoes, and these are from Gujarat. And you can see they're super delicate, individually wrapped. And even though they're a little green, these are like pretty delicious, and they're ready to eat in the next day. So these are the prized mangoes, and they keep them kind of away from the grocery aisles. So if you go into an Indian grocery store in Scarborough, you always want to ask to see what they have behind the counter. And here we are pulling into Janhing. Secrets everywhere. There's mangoes tucked all over the place. Like over here, you've got the Atalfa mangoes from Mexico. You have the apple mangoes from Peru. Hayden mangoes, which I believe are from Mexico. And then over here, we have spice mangoes, which are from Brazil. These are from Brazil. More Jamaica Julie mangoes. And then in the corner, you have a variety of mangoes called apple mangoes from Peru. So there are mangoes everywhere. When you go shopping for mangoes, don't just look in the fruit aisles. And if you find one mango, don't assume that is where all the mangoes are going to be. We're about to visit Kohinoor Foods, which is where you could find Alfonso, Kesar mangoes in the spring months, and in the summer months, the Sindhi mangoes from Pakistan. Azim, tell us, where do you normally keep the mangoes?
We keep it behind the counter because they're, so precious and quite expensive. So we just don't put it outside like the Mexican mangoes.
So do you have any Alfonso mangoes today?
Absolutely. We just got a shipment today about just a few minutes back. And that's what the boxes look like. Right now, we're bringing in about 80 to 100 a week.
Cases a week?
Cases, yes.
Yeah.
And we sell out pretty well. To be sure that you'll get your mangoes, it's better you call us and reserve the boxes.
Azim's not kidding. There is a physical waiting list that you can call in and put your name down on just to get a case of mangoes. This is the kind of city we're living in, which is amazing. We are mango obsessed. Look at that. Wow.
The city hosted a special celebration today to welcome newcomers to Toronto. Newcomer Day was first proclaimed in 2015. There's a full schedule of events today, including musical performances and an information fair to highlight support systems available to newcomers.
Every year, we welcome thousands of new Torontonians from all over the world. And today, we celebrate the amazing contributions that newcomers make to our city. Toronto is proof that communities are made all the more vibrant when individuals from different backgrounds come together.
I think it's a great event, that will showcase newcomers, the beauty of Canada, and all the things that Canada have to offer for newcomers.
Would this have been useful, do you think, when you first showed up in Canada?
Oh, definitely. It definitely would have been useful, and I think it would have been even more useful for the previous generation as well. But now there's so much offered, so much services. It's so much more easier to find information as a newcomer to Canada.
It can be hard to settle into a new environment. You've all chosen to make Toronto your home for different reasons. And that choice, that so many people are in Toronto because they chose Toronto, I firmly believe is one of the reasons that the city is so special.
Since I came, I went around to most of the stores, you know, especially like things like education and employment things that they have to offer. So, yeah, I think there is a lot of opportunities for newcomers.
That event helps newcomers so much because there are lots of booths. Some give the service related to refugee, employment, job seeker, education, language, related to everything. That is very, very beautiful event. And I liked it so much. I love Canada.
And the sun was shining on Newcomer Day in Toronto too today.
Yeah, and a welcome to all of them. Makes you feel good to be a Canadian and to hear all these wonderful things, right? Frost advisory, not such a wonderful thing, but it is like a heads up for the opportunity to just make sure you're going to take care of some of those potted plants. Maybe you could bring them inside, into the garage even often helps. It'll be patchy in nature, but there it is, a cool night again tonight with those clear skies. And then the temperatures are going to be getting milder. I don't just mean during the day, I mean some of our overnight lows too. We've got maybe one more night to get through and then we'll see them in the double digits. Tonight they're not. 6 degrees for Toronto. Sunshine Friday, 21 degrees. And in the weekend, it just gets warmer and warmer.
Ooh, music to my ears. Thanks, Colette.
You're welcome.
And that's our show for you tonight. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 6. Have a great night, everyone.